You just made the list!
Mark your calendars for Insights EDU 2025, February 12th through 14th. Insights EDU 2025 is the can't-miss higher education marketing and enrollment management conference of the year. We're taking over New Orleans with speakers from Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the country. Discover how AI is transforming marketing and enrollment management, how to assess online program opportunities, and meet the demands of today's modern learner. Don't wait. Spots are going quickly. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go!
Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. And as you know, if you have listened, I usually don't host. It's usually the co-founder, Dr. Joseph Salustio. Today, I'm going to host because I am very curious and interested to learn more about what these two gentlemen are up to. So let's get right into it. So our guest today, you know I'm bad with names, so I'm going to try my best. I got it right before we hit record, but I'm going to try again. His name is Neil McPhedran, and the other co-founder is Gregg Oldring. They are co-founders of what they call Higher Ed Pods. Neil, Gregg, how you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, cool. So first question, did I get the names good? I'm good to go? Good to go?
Nailed it.
We got the names right. That's nice work. Thank you.
I appreciate that. All right, so I'd love to just dive right into it. So tell the audience, I think I'll start with you, Neil, and then Gregg, maybe you jump in. What is Higher Ed Pods? Who do you serve? What's it for? How do you guys come up with it? Tell us the story. Go for it.
Higher Ed Pods is a directory and community for higher education, university, academic podcasts. So we have our main business is Podium Podcast Company, and we produce and work with podcasts predominantly in the higher education space. And through that, we really identified there was this lack of way to find other podcasts sort of in that category. But also, we have a podcast that I have with a co-host called Continuing Studies, which is focused on higher education podcasters, so very niche and focused in on a tight community there. But one of the things we heard over and over and over and over again was this yearning and want for higher education podcasters to meet each other, share best practices, essentially create a community. So it was out of this need or hole in the market, if you will, that we've identified, and so we've started to build Higher Ed Pods around.
Gotcha. Gregg, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and so it's an interesting project as well. So for me, I'm the sort of tech entrepreneur for a very long time now, working with Neil as the CTO of Podium Podcasts, and so this project for me was a fun thing to try out. No code. Like building things on a no-code environment, so which is boring to most people, but for me it was really interesting, and so creating this directory is sort of the starting point of being able to create community, like a reason for people to go to a website and put in the podcasts from their university or college, and to be able to go and find these things. And so that's the starting point, to be able to find podcasts and to be found, because that's a huge problem for everybody, but particularly in higher ed. And then by creating an account and joining a newsletter, and that that's how we start to build a community around this. And that was where I jumped in on the technical side of it.
Gotcha. So you mentioned Podium. Before we continue with higher ed pods. Talk to us a little bit about Podium. What's that all about? Dive deeper into that.
Yeah, it's I guess a podcast agency that I started about coming up 5 years ago now, and where we found ourselves is working with a lot of universities. So we made some inroads with Stanford University early on, and just really identified a unique opportunity there, and we've just really kind of doubled down the business, if you will, on that category. We work with other non-profit entities with their podcasts and for profit as well too, but really a lot of what we're focused in on is that higher education space. So we work with them from a production support perspective, but more so helping their sort of technology back end, helping them with their website, analytics. We do a lot with analytics. So all of our clients, we do monthly analytics and reports, and we dive deep into that, and just, working on the overall product, if you will, the podcast itself, and helping the team make it better, basically.
So I assume, and I think I saw this, you both are higher ed, currently working in higher ed now, or you have higher ed experience. What are your stories about your, I guess, connection to higher ed?
So for me, my connection to higher ed is that I've done a couple of tech startups in higher education, so ed tech startups. Yeah, one in particular that sadly, it was a really great one. It got obliterated by the pandemic, though. It was helping international students to find schools. It was like a dating app to find schools, you used to say. Mm-hmm. So the timing was wrong for that. It could have been perfect if we were a little bit earlier, but it was anyway. So that was my I wouldn't say my introduction, but that was where I was fully into higher education. Before that, I had a business where we did email newsletters similar to, it was called Mail Out, and we had a lot of we had a lot of university clients, anyways. And so I got to know that space pretty well, and got a sense of the silos within universities and colleges, oftentimes that exist, most of the time that exist, and so when I'm talking to Neil about this story, or about this, environment that he's working in, and this idea that podcasters in the same university oftentimes don't know that the other exists, that he's coming across. He's introducing to people as a consultant, introducing to people to each other in the same institution. That resonated with me. I've experienced that quite a bit before with the email newsletters as well. And so I thought, oh, this is a really interesting space. It's something I know a little bit about, and something we can help out with too.
What about you, Neil?
My background is agency world, mostly focused on the digital side. So I've grown up from a career perspective with the interwebs. So I definitely along the way have had clients and worked with different universities, but the last 4 years really zoning in and focusing on higher ed is a new trajectory in my career, and I gotta say I really, really enjoy it. I find that the podcasts that we work with on an ongoing basis, it's really interesting content. First and foremost, it's fascinating content. I learn things every single day from the podcasts I work on. Like, for example, we work with the School of Engineering at Stanford on their podcast called The Future of Everything, and it just like the title says, every week the episode is something that sort of blows my mind, and I learned something from. So I really like the content, and the people too. I really enjoy all of our clients, and I feel like there's a different reason for being for their podcasts. Most of them truly are really trying to reach outside of the the classroom, and whatever their area of expertise is, bring that to a larger crowd. So it's I get up every day, and I quite enjoy working with the various podcasts that we work with.
Can I dive in on that a little bit too?
Yeah, go for it.
Because it's a really interesting thing working with higher education, because the motives and the motivations are different for, back when I was doing newsletters, it was different than, let's say, if you're trying to sell, shoes or something like that through an email newsletter. And the same is true again with podcasts. And then as a result, a lot of the tools, when we talk about analytics and we talk about this space that we're trying to create here, the reason for getting together as a group is different than, let's say, if the purpose was to be selling things. So, higher education, you have so many stakeholders typically that are important. So to be a podcast in this space that has 10 million listeners would be cool, but it wouldn't necessarily hit the mark for what a podcast is trying to achieve, which is so hard to wrap your head around if you don't know the space. But if your stakeholders, those who fund you, or those who are going to be attending your classes, or going to be funding the research, or if it's not those who are going to be citing your research, if those aren't among those 10 million people, then it doesn't matter so much. Like, you're not hitting your mark. And it's a different animal for sure than trying to create a podcast that is huge, that has an ad revenue model, let's say. So it's a different use case. And so it makes it interesting again, like going back to higher ed pods, like being discovered and being heard. We actually heard that from one of our advisors who's part of a network, a podcast network for a big university. And that was his point exactly. He said, if it's nice that we have some of these big podcasts, but what's really important to us is that our professors get heard and cited now by, let's say, the New York Times or the Economist. That's what's really important for that podcast. Even though there's 1 million listeners, those couple of listeners really matter, because now they know, okay, this professor's work, and she or he is really great on a microphone. All these things, these are really important, and that's what they want to achieve with that podcast. And so creating this tool where podcasts can be discovered, you can find out, you can find information about professors, you can hear them in interviews, you can type in their name and find them, let's say, or type in their research and find it. That's really interesting and powerful, and we're happy to have created that, at least at this point.
Yeah, and I love it. I'm a big fan. Obviously, podcasting is my thing. That higher ed niche is fantastic. I've worked in higher ed 20 plus years, and so, but I want to know how. I think I'm looking at your website. How did you get 729 podcasts already from 99 different universities and colleges? How did you do that? What was it? Tell me that process.
It's one part, us seeding it, and another part sort of it being discovered and people adding it after the fact, right? So you can't create a network effect without it being sort of fostered, right? So that's the initial step, is creating a mechanism where we can add podcasts in the first place, but then also that people can add them themselves. And because it's higher education, people don't have sort of locked doors to keep the public away. So when a podcast gets added, it's pretty easy to send a notification to that podcast that they've been added if it wasn't them that added it themselves. And so that's how it grows essentially.
Gotcha. And so, now that you are, got it all set up, I guess maybe, Neil, I know the goal is discovery, right? But, what's the day-to-day look like with this, higher ed pods for you all? Because this is not the full-time gig, right? You'll both have other job you're doing. This is kind of like a project.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we want to keep growing it. We want to continue to add on more universities. So hopefully there's some listeners out there that have a podcast and are interested in joining. But ultimately the community layer that we mentioned would be something we really want to focus in on. So the directory, which is kind of like the discovery mechanism, is definitely key. But that where we see that there's opportunity is to help facilitate a bit of a community. So we've got a bunch of things on our target list to start layering in, from meetups, just online ways that people can gather. We're talking about some specific mechanisms, such as creating some sort of mechanism where where higher ed podcasts can do promo swaps, promote each other, ways that they can share best practices. And what we've heard about wanting to share resources, and just sort of general knowledge. I was chatting with someone who runs a podcast for a big U.S. University, and alumni podcast, and she just was talking about how their funding to go to conferences has dried up a bit, and that's where I'd originally met her at Podcast Movement. And she's just feeling, and she's feeling a little out of touch now because she hasn't. It's been about a year since she's gone to a podcast conference. So, although she's doing podcasting daily, if you will, or that's her main gig, she feels kind of out of touch of, and she listens to and reads newsletters and whatnot, but she just feels a little bit out of touch of the industry because she's really focused in on her podcast and her team on her podcast, and not getting to that larger other podcasters, and so really kind of, I think ultimately that's really where we're trying to fill that gap for those podcasters. We're also in the new year launching a podcast called Higher Ed Pods. So we're gonna start featuring some of these podcasts as well too. So we've just discovered some just incredible podcasts in there, obviously. So we just want to bring those, give those some wider notoriety, and just give a chance for some of these podcasts to be a little bit more known and discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. Gregg, anything you want to add to that?
Well, in the day-to-day, I mean, it's kind of like gardening, more or less, for me, There's the podcast. It's been an interesting project. I've seen podcasts that have died, that are that are gone, right? And so, there's tending that part of the garden. There's those that are sort of blooming. We've got podcasts that you can see, which episodes from the 700 and plus podcasts, which episodes are new that day. And there's some that are in that list every day, which is kind of interesting. So there are those that publish daily. And then there's the evergreen portion of it too. And so those podcasts that have content, if it's math, let's say, it's good for the next 1,000 years probably as content. So it's pretty interesting. And so that's part of my role. And so creating sort of the technical tools, and some of them are squishy technical things too, like categorization, for example, we categorized created categories anyways that align more with higher education rather than categories of podcasts, that you'd see in your podcast app. Like, some of them are, business and medicine, let's say, that seems pretty similar. But then you start to get into social sciences or interdisciplinary. Like this podcast is under higher ed, just because we needed a category for those of us that serve higher education, right? So there's that, or administration and alumni. Those are sort of not so much about the subject, like a classic subject matter, but things that universities do. So there's those categorization and creating tools to make that kind of surface so that people can find things by categories and so on. So that's that gardening element is my day-to-day, let's say.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, that helps me understand what's going on day to day. And so I do want to dive a little bit deeper in I see 65 higher ed pod members. I think, Neil, you mentioned that a little bit, but can you talk to us about what does that mean, those 65 higher ed?
Can I jump in on that one?
You just made the list.
Mark your calendars for Insights EDU 2025, February 12th through 14th. Insights EDU 2025 is the can't-miss higher education marketing and enrollment management conference of the year. We're taking over New Orleans with speakers from Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the country. Discover how AI is transforming marketing and enrollment management, how to assess online program opportunities, and meet the demands of today's modern learner. Don't wait. Spots are going quickly. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go.
Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
So those
I like great.
those are the people that have signed up and created an account in the system. And so you can claim your podcast as one reason to create an account. And so you can, manage it as more or less on there. And also there are people that have created accounts just to be part of the community. So, to get the newsletter and then to get invited to events that are as they're coming and so on. So that's what those people are. That's who those people are. And what's really interesting about this, just in creating, you asked the question earlier about, how do we create and get so many podcasts on there? From my experience with higher education previously, my dog is growling. Background.
So we have a part of the conversation.
Part of the conversation. Okay. Yeah. So it's an ominous feel to this. But so part of my background was knowing that within higher education, there's a real sort of hierarchy to it. It's sort of like junior high school or middle school or whatever. In some respects, if you get the cool kids first, then the other kids come.
Yeah.
So the cool kids in higher ed, we kind of are the name brand schools. They we all know who they are, and they know who they are too. And so those are the first schools that we seeded this with. And what was fascinating to me is because it's really hard. It's really hard to get those people to sign up for anything. Like if you work at an Ivy League school or in the Oxford, Cambridge, like any of those, it's really hard to get them to do anything. Well, lo and behold, right away they started signing up and creating accounts, and then we had things like people from some of the big sort of networks that overlap, like that also signed up and thought, okay, we're really onto something with this, having created it. So that was really exciting to us. I mean, so that's how this thing sort of started, and that's who the people are that are behind it. That some people, when there's press like this, like people will sign up based on that, and so we see those sort of spikes happen at those times. But it's interesting that it's people from the institutions that you see on there are the people primarily that make up that group.
Yeah, and it's something that I want to go back to, which you mentioned. I'm not sure if it was Gregg or Neil, but that I think it was Neil, that the universities, which is so higher ed, it's silos, right? So you can,
Yes.
one department has a podcast, but the other department had no clue they have a podcast as well. I'm looking at your website and I see University of Alberta has 4 different podcasts right there. So my question is that what you're going to be doing? Is it one as they come in and say, hey, by the way, did you know that your university also has another podcast here? And then bringing them together, sharing resources, and what's the idea here?
That's you're talking about our next stage there for sure. Yeah. I mean, in creating a network, there's the nodes within the network, in those sort of clusters, I guess, that's really important in creating a network. And the obvious ones, go along the lines of either subject matter or schools. And so within a school, it really makes sense that people would know each other in this space. And so where, there's some schools, I think Penn State, I think, is probably one of the ones that has a nice cluster where they already have a sense of a community there, and so they have a bunch of them. University of Alberta, that's where I'm actually located right now. I'm not that far from the University of Alberta. It's just hilarious to point that one out. There's actually far more than 4 there, but and that's one that I would, we would love to sort of foster that community there, because I don't think most of them know each other. Actually, I'm pretty sure that most people there don't know each other. I think within faculties, there might be people that will know each other, but just from my own experience in working with them and having gone to that institution myself, chances are that, if there's business podcasts, that those people might know each other. Engineering podcasts, that those people might know each other, and the rest of them, they're on their own. So that's my guess as to how it would be. So
yeah, gotcha. And Neil, anything you want to add to that, Neil?
No, I other than just to add to Gregg's comment there about them sort of not meeting each other. I think that's what we've found a number of examples where we've actually done that, where we've gone like, you have a fellow Yale podcaster. Have you ever talked to them before? Oh, no, I actually haven't. And then we're introducing them to each other. So it's really interesting to see that happen. Other schools we see are more quote unquote networked. So there's definitely a handful of schools that someone like a podcaster at the university has put up their hand and connected with other podcasters in other faculties and schools within the university. So, but for the most part, we see, as Gregg was saying, vast majority of at the institution level are quite siloed. But back to sort of what I was saying off the top when I was just sort of introducing it, every single one of those people we've talked to has this yearning to connect and to share. So we're really hoping what we're creating here can really help to facilitate that.
Yeah, no, I think this is my Boston coming out. It's wicked smart, so I like saying that. So that's a good idea.
I like that.
So, but I do want to know if you have this information. I'm always curious. Why would a higher ed institution, faculty member, staff member, or department, why would they start a podcast? Do you have any data and research that says this is the main reason why? Because I think it was you, Gregg, maybe they talked about how they want the faculty and their research to get out there because they want, the New York Times and those folks, economists, to listen and be able to reference that. But that's just one component of it. Do you have any thoughts on why you think? Because I'm always like, everyone should start a podcast. I'm just everyone should start a podcast. But I'm curious, What are your thoughts on why do you think higher ed institutions and faculty?
Well, I think there's different reasons. I mean, we work with different types of higher ed podcasts. So on one end of the spectrum, you've got alumni. So their reason for being is to connect and create that ongoing connection point with their alumni. A lot, but and then you've got others that are more at the professor level. So a professor is wanting to do something in his or her field. It could be something to do with their textbook or just sort of generally reaching out beyond the classroom. But I think what I've seen, at least doing this for the last 5 years and working closely with different schools, is podcasting as a channel has become as important as they would consider their email list or their social media channels and footprint, or their website, or even their magazine. And so, and I've seen this grow over the last 5 years, that the level of importance of the podcast into the mix, where maybe a handful of years ago it was more of a side project. But I think they've discovered, a lot of the schools that have been doing it for a while, and a lot of the teams that have been doing it for a while, is this is a channel that reaches broadly. You can put out a podcast and it'll go on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, dozens of other apps, as we know. It's they need content. So especially the comms departments, which are doing a lot of this. So you've got your audio, and maybe you've got video. Some of them are doing video, but you've got all these assets now that'll come out of it. Like this is great email content. It's each episode's a web page on their website. There's multiple assets you can create for your social media channels. So it's evolved into a recognizable, legit channel that is as important for a lot of these teams as these other sort of things like email that Gregg was talking about. Email, he's been at it. He was 20 years ago he started, and then that evolved into this really important channel for universities and for some podcasting has. But it's also this incredible source for content, which there's this demand for, right? As I said, especially the comms department.
Yeah, Gregg, you want to add anything?
And it's an owned space as well, right? So you're not putting content specifically with a podcast. It's one of the things I love about podcasting. The RSS feeds, it's an open thing, right? Like, so Spotify and Apple and YouTube have all their reasons, let's say, to try and create walled gardens, but there's enough of them right now that nobody's got a monopoly and putting walls around it all. So this is your content that kind of persists. And like I say, so much that comes out of higher education is evergreen content. So these are reasons to be discovered, reasons to be heard for a very long time, not just when you put out that one thing that's going to hopefully catch this for this afternoon or something, right? That piece I think is really cool and very important with podcasting for higher education generally. And it is, the stakes are low to start, and
Sure.
and you can start very easily. And it's one of the podcasts that we work with is spun out of higher education, or spun out of Stanford, Think Fast, Talk Smart. It's still sort of associated with Stanford, but it was in the tens of people for the first episode, and now it's huge. I mean, it's a massive podcast. So, you don't have to feel like you're going to have a giant audience, and it doesn't have to be super polished day one. But you can grow into that and evolve along the way as you grow. So I think it's a really great opportunity for either professors or comms departments, both, and students even to start to build and see where it goes.
Yeah, no, I agree. This has been great. conversation. Obviously, I'm selfish. I love podcasts. So I appreciate it. So I want to wrap up, and I want to ask you both. We'll start with Neil. So, what do you see as the future of higher education and podcasting? If you want to kind of see, where do you think it's all going to go? I mean, all this is happening. A lot more people are jumping on. What do you think is going to happen next 5-10 years? Or what's your crystal ball?
Well, I think that we're seeing massive disruption in higher education. And I think that podcasting is going to be, podcasting is not causing that disruption, but I think podcasting is going to be an interesting place where we can start to, as we rethink what the definition of the classroom is and how how we connect with students and how we educate. I think podcasting can be a really interesting component and provide just new ways to educate and to get the word out for what certain schools are doing and so on and so forth. And I think Gregg's right about the comment about it's a different medium where it's an RSS feed, so it's open and you can own that audience in a different way than, say, like someone who's built like I wouldn't want to be a someone who's built a business on TikTok right now, for example. My channel and my audience on TikTok, that could just disappear. TikTok's not disappearing, but we all know what I'm trying to get at here, right? So you can and it can, and there's I think the other side of it is there's some really cool stuff happening from a technology perspective right now within podcasting. We haven't really even talked about that, and I think that would be a whole other discussion. But there's so much happening with these dozens and dozens of other apps that are doing really cool things with transcripts and chapters and the ways you can sort of do, and video and components of video and whatnot. So where podcasting as a technology is going, private podcasting, where podcasting is going as a technology, I think is super interesting as well, sort of as higher education overall, I think, is disrupted over the next decade.
Yeah. Gregg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I echo what Neil has said there. I think I wouldn't bet on this happening, but I see the opportunity anyway with RSS in particular and the convergence of all mediums. So you can, in private podcasts, you think about it all together, you can deliver an audio book, a video, a lot of different media types that are used in education and learning through public and private podcasts. And I actually do think it'd be really interesting for a podcast app to just focus on education, to be able to deliver these general streams, but then also maybe what you're learning in class or what you're learning from a particular professor or institution. And which will be, if that does happen, that's a really interesting thing, because it starts to blend or blur the lines of, am I in this class or not in this class type of thing. There's the structures that we've created around higher education have an opportunity to blur a little bit in ways that are more helpful to people. But I do think that the most, known credentials around the world, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD, those aren't going away anytime soon, as they're known. It's a credential that we all kind of understand, all 8 billion of us, which there are very, very, very few of those. So that's not going to go away fast, but it can change very slowly and morph perhaps, and have maybe be delivered in more economical ways too.
Yeah, no, I so agree. You're right. We could go podcasting 2.0, value for value. There's so much.
There's a lot there.
We can go. But I don't think that the audience is like, the higher ed.
Yeah.
But, I think we all agree that it's just not going anywhere. Podcasting and within higher ed, I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And yeah, sure, shows would die, but then other people come on and they start a new show. So I just don't see it. And it's so personal. It's in your earbuds. You get to, you can learn so much. I mean, it's on and you can listen whenever you want. I love to do dishes and put on my headbuds and listen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm such a big fan. I'm glad you guys are. And hopefully people listening become fans. So go to higheredpods.com, higheredpods.com.
Yes, thank you.
If you have a podcast, definitely sign up. I did. I saw it right out of the guy. EdUp Experience. Got to get on there right away. So I love what you guys are doing. I love what keeps going. So thank you so much, Neil. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Alvin. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for featuring us.
Oh, yeah, of course. So let me outro you guys. So Neil and Gregg, co-founders of Higher Ed Pods, higheredpods.com. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've just ed up.
Attention, higher ed leaders. Are you ready to transform your marketing and enrollment strategy? Don't miss Insights EDU, February 12th through 14th in New Orleans, the premier conference for higher education marketing and enrollment management. Spots are filling fast. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go.
Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.